Shabbat Shalom. So excited to be with you all once again and to be able to have this sweet and special time right before Shabbat. I hope you all enjoyed our little Shabbat dinner together last week. I know that many of you mentioned that you really enjoyed it, and I am really excited to be able to get this week into some of the deeper significance and meaning of what's going on in this week's Torah portion, because there is a lot. We're going to talk about the hidden meaning behind some of the holidays and the menorah. So Shabbat Shalom, Peter, Sharon, Laurel, Mark, Eric, good to see you all. Michael, Shabbat Shalom, my friend, I miss you. Mike, Shabbat Shalom to you in Texas. Aaron, Eric Lee, what's up, homie? Aaron, good to see you all. Glad you guys. Jackie, Shabbat Shalom. Good Shabbos. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom, Regina, Kyle, Yvonne. Good to see you all. Deb, Yvonne, I've been praying for you and for your family. Jana, Deb, Christina, good to see you all. I am Angela. I'm excited to talk with you about this week's meaning of the holidays, some of the things that are going on. Whenever I look at the scriptures by the numbers and the deeper connections, it always blows my mind. Singing along in Williamsburg, yes, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom. Love it. You know, I want to ask you guys, Kathy, Katie, I really, and Rick, friends, I really need your prayers, honestly. This is such a crazy season. We are working on a new and exciting resource, and I've been studying like 6 hours, 8 hours a day, and it's been crazy. Would you please pray for me? I am exhausted. I've got just a couple weeks to complete this project. And I want to invite you to please, I need extra strength and extra grace from God, wisdom and revelation, endurance to run this to completion. Shalom, Rebecca in Australia, Marianne and Brian, Shabbat Shalom. Well, I'm excited to be able to get in this week's Torah portion review. So we're just going to begin to jump in and get going. So this week's Torah portion is known as Emor. Can you say Emor? Emor? And one of the things we read in this week's Torah portion is Leviticus Vayikra. Leviticus in Hebrew is called Vayikra. The 23rd chapter, this is what it says. Then Adonai. Adonai means the Lord in Hebrew. Then Adonai spoke to Moses, saying, speak to the Bnei Yisrael. Can you say Bnei means children, Yisrael, of Israel. Speak to the Bnei Yisrael, speak to the children of Israel, and tell them, these are the appointed Moedim of Adonai. The Moedim of Adonai, which are you to proclaim as holy convocations, my Moedim. So listen, can you say Moedim? Moedim means appointed times. The Moedim are the biblical holidays mentioned in Leviticus 23. And there are 7 biblical holidays that are mentioned here in this passage. Okay? So the 7 biblical holidays, beginning with the Shabbat. So these 7 holidays are broken up into 3 sets. There is the weekly, there is the spring, and there is the fall. So 3 in the spring, 3 in the fall, and the weekly Sabbath. The fact that they're broken up into 3 is going to be significant we will see in a couple moments. And so I want you to notice, though, it says these are, doesn't say, this says these are the Lord's appointed times. It doesn't say these are Israel's holiday, these are the Jewish people holidays. It says these are God's appointed times. And that's significant. By saying they're God's appointed times, it means that God has set these apart and they should be significant to all people because they are the Lord's. Now, I also want us to see something else here in this passage, and we're going to get deeper here in a moment. Kind of the word moed means an appointment. Okay, it's, the tabernacle was called the Ohel Moed. It's a place of meeting. So the point is that what God is saying is he wants us to get out our day timers, and he wants us to set a time, very specific times that we connect with him. And I want to see that this idea of the Moedim ties all the way back to creation. Because in Genesis in the opening chapters of Genesis, okay, this is what we read. We read chapter 1, it says this, and God set the lights in the expanse of the skies to be for separating day from night, and they will be for signs and for seasons, for days and for years. So I want us to see that. So God put the sun and the moon and the stars in the sky for two primary reasons to start. They are to be for signs, they are to be for seasons, and then they're going to be for days and years. So three things that they're going to do. But the word for seasons there doesn't mean winter, spring, summer, and fall. It uses the word moedim, that these are actually referring to God's appointed time. So God puts the sun, the moon, and the stars in the sky to lead all of creation in worship of him, so that they will know when the appointed times of God has come. So what does this tell us? It tells us that the biblical holidays, the Moedim mentioned in Leviticus 23, were already in the mind of God at creation, and that worship woven into the very fabric of creation, which is pretty amazing. Worship is woven into the very fabric of creation, and the worship are these biblical holidays mentioned in Leviticus 23. Now that's significant. We've talked about this many times, but every major event in the life of Yeshua, in the life of Jesus, happened on a biblical holiday. And the disciples honored these days. They worshiped on these days. Even after the resurrection, this was the case. We see that Acts chapter 2, when the Spirit came, was a Jewish holiday, Shavuot, Pentecost. Okay? So they honored the holidays. We also see that in the Messianic kingdom, these holidays are also going to be significant as well. They're going to be important in the future. Isaiah 66:23 says this, for just as the new heavens and the new earth, which I will make, will endure before me, it is a declaration of Adonai, so your descendants and your name will endure. And it will come to pass from new moon to new moon, and from Shabbat to Shabbat, from Sabbath to Sabbath, all flesh will come to bow down before me, says Adonai the Lord. So the book of Isaiah, the closing verses of the book of Isaiah, talk about the fact that all flesh, every Sabbath, is going to come and worship before the Lord. Zechariah 14 says this, that all the survivors of the nations that attack Jerusalem will go up from year to year to worship the King, Adonai Tzivaot, the Lord of hosts, and to celebrate Sukkot, the Feast of Tabernacles. Furthermore, if any of the nations do not go up to Jerusalem to worship the King, Adonai Tzivaot, they will not have rain. And if the Egyptians do not go up, they will experience no rain. And Adonai will inflict the same upon the nations that do not go up to celebrate Sukkot, the Feast of Tabernacles. So in the same way that Shabbat is in the kingdom, the Feast of Tabernacles is in the kingdom. So why is this the first holiday mentioned in Leviticus 23, Shabbat, and the last holiday mentioned in Leviticus 23, Sukkot, the Feast of Tabernacles? All three, both of those are mentioned as going to be celebrated in the kingdom of God. So if the holidays were important in the past and they're important in the future, I think they should be important to us right now. That seems to be part of the lesson from the first one to the last one. I believe this is part of your full inheritance, and we have to learn to live with the times and the seasons. This is really important and significant, learning to live with the times and the seasons. And I believe what that means is there is a blessing, there is wisdom, there is revelation when we come into alignment with the biblical holidays and with the Hebrew calendar. That's why we wrote the book on Breakthrough and Overflow, because we want you to come into alignment with the times and the seasons. The first Moed mentioned, can you say Moed, is Shabbat. Shabbat is the first biblical holiday mentioned in Leviticus 23. Shabbat begins, as most of you know, from Friday night to Saturday night. That period is the biblical Shabbat, Friday night to Saturday night. And Shabbat has a numerical value of 702. 702. This, which is significant, because we also read about something else in this week's Torah portion that is also connected to the number 702. In the Hebrew phrase, the biblical phrase, Yerecha Menorah, Yerecha v'Kana, the menorah lamp and its branches, which is a phrase straight from the scriptures, has a numerical value of 702 as well. And right after we read about the 7 holidays in Leviticus 23, we read beginning in Leviticus 24, then Adonai, the Lord, spoke to Moses, saying, order the children of Israel to bring pure olive oil beaten for the light, to keep a lamp burnt continually outside of the curtain of the testimony. He is to keep the lamps in order of the pure gold menorah before Adonai continually. So what we see going on in this passage is that right after Leviticus 23, we read about the menorah. The first thing we read about Shabbat, 702, Leviticus 23. The first thing we read about in Leviticus 24 is the menorah, Shabbat 702, and the menorah and its branches in Hebrew equals 702. Why is that significant? It's significant because the 7 branches of the menorah correspond to, guess what? The 7 days of the week. So let me show you this little picture here. So we see the 7 days, okay? The first day of the week, the second, the third, okay? Then you have the 4th, the 5th, the 6th. And notice what's in the middle. The middle branch is the Shabbat. So you have the 3 on the right and the 3 on the left pointing towards the middle branch, which is the Shabbat. And by the way, Genesis chapter 1:1, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, has 7 words in Hebrew. Bereshit, bara, Elohim, et hashamayim, ve'et ha'aretz. Genesis chapter 1 has 7 words that correspond to the 7 days of creation, which correspond to the 7 branches of the menorah, 3 on the right, 3 on the left, 1 in the center, and the Shabbat is the middle branch. Well, what does that mean? This middle branch is really important. That is the most significant branch, okay? This is known as the central branch. It's known as the Western lamp, or the Ner Ma'aravi, okay, the Western lamp. And the Shabbat and the golden menorah symbolically and numerically point to the Messiah. It's amazing. This points to the Messiah. So the question is how? Well, the first thing we understand, right, is that Yeshua said Shabbat was made for man and not man for the Shabbat. Shabbat was made for man, not man for the Shabbat. Okay? So the message that we hear, that's Mark 2:27 and 2:28. And then he goes on to say that he is, so the Son of Man is the Lord of the Shabbat. So the Messiah, who is the Lord of the Shabbat, came to prepare the way for the Messianic age. And the Messianic age in Jewish thought is known as Yom Shekulo Shabbat. Can you say Yom Shekulo Shabbat? Yom Shekulo Shabbat. It means the time that is all Shabbat. So in Jewish thought, in biblical thought, the Messianic age is going to be a time that is a complete Sabbath. Okay, this is what we read about in Hebrews chapter 4, right? It says, for if Joshua had given them rest, God would not have spoken of another day later on. So there remains a Shabbat, a Sabbath rest, a Shabbat rest for the people of God. The Shabbat rest ultimately comes in the Messianic age when the Messianic kingdom is established. And that's going to be a time that is all Shabbat because there's going to be, because God's original and purpose for creation is going to be restored, because when we were in the Garden of Eden, there was no work. Work is the result of the fall. And actually, when we were in the Garden of Eden, it says God put man in the garden. Usually the English translations say to work it and to tend it, but that's not what the Hebrew says. The Hebrew says to worship and to keep it. To worship and to keep what? To worship and to keep God's commandments. So man is not a gardener, man is a worshiper. The Garden of Eden was our tabernacle. And so everything that was lost in Eden is going to be restored in the Messianic kingdom, and it's going to be like it was in the beginning. Our focus of our life is going to be worship, the worship and the service of God, not from a place of toil. We earn our bread by the sweat of our brow. It's stressful. Believe me, I'm feeling it right now. I am exhausted at the end of this week. But it's not going to exist. No exhaustion when the Messiah comes and establishes his kingdom. So the menorah represented the continual presence of the Lord among his people, the continual presence of the Lord among his people. And there was actually a daily miracle that occurred in the temple in the second temple, and in the first, and in the days of the tabernacle. It stopped a number of years before Messiah came. But what happened is that every evening they would put more oil in the 7-candle branched candelabra called the menorah. Okay. And even though the same amount of oil was put in all of the lamps on the 7 branches, the middle one, a miracle occurred that even though all the other 6 had gone out, supernaturally, the middle, the Ner Elohim, the lamp of God, the Ner Hama'aravi, the westernmost lamp, did not go out, but it continued to burn, even though the same amount of oil was in it. And this was meant to testify that the Shekhinah, can you say Shekhinah? Got to get the Cha in there, Shekhinah, that the divine manifest presence of God, Shekhinah comes from the word Shaken, to dwell, that God's manifest presence was dwelling among his people in the midst of the children of Israel. And as we said, it's known as the lamp of God. So the middle one, which is known as the lamp of God, supernaturally would not go out because it's God's presence would never leave the people. And ultimately, this points to the Messiah who says, I will never leave you nor forsake you, but I will remain with you always, even to the end of the age. The middle lamp points to the Messiah. He will never leave us. He's always with us in the form of the Spirit of God. And now I want us to see this because there is the seven branches of the menorah represent the seven attributes of the Messiah that we read about in an important messianic prophecy in Isaiah chapter 11. It says this, then a shoot will come out of the stem of Jesse, and a branch will bear fruit out of his roots. So we're going to talk more about this. So a branch is going to come forth from the root of Jesse. Then it says, V'nacha alav, and there will rest upon him the Ruach Adonai, the Spirit of the Lord, Ruach Chochmah, the Spirit of wisdom, Uvinah, and understanding, Ruach Eitzah Ugvorah, Ruach Da'at, V'yirat Adonai. So we see there's the number one, the spirit of understanding, the spirit of might, the spirit of fear, the spirit of the Lord, the middle, the spirit of knowledge, counsel, and wisdom. 7 all together, and those 7 are actually forming a menorah. But why a menorah? Always got to ask why. It's a very biblical, very Jewish thing. Always have to ask why. The menorah was created to shine light in the holy place. And it pointed to the divine light, as we've seen, of the Lord being among the people. The word for light in Hebrew is or you spell O-H-R in English, transliterated or. And or in Hebrew has a numerical value of 702, which is the mirror number of the menorah and Shabbat. So light equals 207, menorah and Shabbat equals 702. What's the connection? Through the menorah and the Shabbat, through the menorah and the Shabbat, and most fully through Messiah Yeshua, we experience the light of the divine presence. The light of Shabbat, which is meant to point to the Messianic kingdom. The light, and we begin Shabbat by lighting 2 candlesticks, inviting God's presence into our homes. The light of the menorah was meant to symbolize God's eternal presence dwelling among his people. But that light finds its full manifestation in the person of Yeshua. He is the light of God. He is the fullness of the light of Shabbat. And so we see this at the transfiguration when Yeshua removes his flesh. His flesh was like the veil to the holy place or the Holy of Holies. When he removes it, boom, the glory of God is revealed. The light of God is made manifest. And even Moses and Elijah fade away in the glorious light of the Messiah. He is the true light. He is the light of the world. And we see this as another connection between the menorah and the Messiah, because Messiah in Hebrew means Mashiach. Can you say Mashiach, Messiah? Mashiach. Mashiach means the one anointed with olive oil. So Messiah was anointed king, like David was anointed with the horn of oil over his head. And the oil of anointing that the Messiah had to be anointed with, which symbolized divine empowerment by the Spirit, had to be made from Shemen Kazait Zach. Shemen Kazait Zach, which is pure pressed olive oil. So we have to understand is that there were 3 pressings of an olive to get all of the oil out of it. The first pressing was where you get the extra virgin. It is the purest of the olive oil. There is little or no sediment in it. It's just the weight of the olives themselves pressing down on each other and oozing out the olive oil. The second pressing, more weight was added. The third pressing, even more weight, until every last bit of oil was squeezed out of that olive. And this ties to the Garden of Gethsemane. When Yeshua was in the Garden of Gethsemane, he prayed three times. Well, let me say this again. Garden of Gethsemane. Gethsemane means the place of the olive press. Guess where the majority of the olive oil that was used for the anointing oil and the oil for the menorah in the temple was made? It was made on the Mount of Olives. And on the Mount of Olives, there was a garden called the Garden of Gethsemane where they pressed the olives, and a lot of it was used in the temple. So Messiah is in the place of the olive press. He's in the place where the oil for a lot of the oil for the temple is made. And 3 times he says, take this cup from me. 3 times he asks his disciples to tarry with him in prayer, and they don't. And as he's praying, what happens? It says, and being in agony, he was praying fervently, and sweat became like drops of blood falling down upon the ground. Do you see the picture? Just like the 3 pressings of the olives, which more weight is added, while he's praying in the garden, more and more weight is being added. The weight of the burden of our sins is being added to him, and he is being pressed and crushed like the olive in the press for you and for me. And he asked the disciples to join him, and they can't even pray with him those 3 times. And he says, get up and pray that you may not enter into temptation. Say, guys, I want you to understand, he went through the pressing for your blessing. He was pressed so that you could be blessed. Say, he was pressed so that I could be blessed. And friends, when you go through the pressing, it's always for blessing. Say, my pressing is for blessing. My pressing is for blessing. Just make that declaration. God is pressing you. He's bringing out something more within you. And I want you to see that the reason why it has to, he has to go to, it begins his passion, the beginning of his suffering is in the garden with these three times, take this cup. And he says to the disciples, you should pray so that you do not enter into temptation. Listen, he's going back to the Garden of Eden. He's tempted. He's the Garden of Gethsemane is like a return to the Garden of Eden. Peter is going to deny the Lord 3 times. They failed the test like Adam and Eve failed the test. But if they would have tarried with the Lord in prayer, they would have been strengthened and been able to endure. But of course, there is even more. The Gospel of Matthew states this concerning Yeshua. It says, and he went and lived in a town called Nazareth, not Nazareth in Hebrew. So was fulfilled what was said to the prophets, he would be called a Nazarene, Matthew 2:23. He went and lived in Nazareth to fulfill what was spoken of by the prophets, that he would be called a Nazarene. On the surface, there is a problem. Yes, we're coming full circle now because we'll see here, we're coming for a circle. But on the surface, there seems to be a problem with this thing because there is no direct messianic prophecy that says the Messiah will be called a Nazarene. So the question is, what does this mean? Did Matthew make a mistake? Of course not. He's under the inspiration of the Spirit. We have to understand the significance of the name of Nazareth. Nazareth comes from the Hebrew word netzer. Netzer means an olive branch, like an olive shoot, a baby branch. This ties back to Isaiah 11:1 and 2, which we have already read. It says, then a shoot will come out of the stem of Jesse. V'netzer moreshav yifreh. Mishorashav. V'netzer mishorashav yifreh. And so a netzer will, a shoot will come forth from the stem of Jesse. What we have to understand is that Nazareth gets its name from the word netzer. Natseret, netzer. So the Messiah was, by living in Natseret, Nazareth, he was fulfilling Isaiah 11, chapter 1, that a netzer would come forth from the root of David, from the root of Jesse. And he's of the lineage of Jesse. He's of the lineage of David. And so based on this verse, one of the names of the Messiah in the Bible is Netzer. Can you say Netzer? Netzer means the branch. The Messiah is known as the Netzer, the branch. There's also another name for branch that refers to the Messiah. That's a synonym, samach, But I want you to see this as a play on words. Netzer notzri, Netzer notzri. The branch of Nazareth, Netzer notzri in Hebrew. And guess what? Shabbat adds up to 702. The menorah and its branches add up to 702. The menorah connects to Isaiah 11:2, the 7 branches of menorah, the 7 branches of the Messiah. And the phrase Netzer notzri, branch, the branch of Nazareth, adds up to, guess what? 702. The branch of Nazareth. The light of the Shabbat, 702. The branches of the menorah, 702, point to the divine presence of God among his people, also point to the brightness of the Messiah, the messianic olive branch, the Messiah, the one anointed with oil from Nazareth, Netzer notzri, 702. And in the Messiah, we find Sabbath rest and truly see, as Paul writes, the light of the knowledge of the glory of God in the face of Messiah. But there's one more thing I want to mention, because we still did not connect this all back to the holidays. So Leviticus 23, 7 biblical holidays. Leviticus 24, the 7-branch menorah. The menorah, 7 days of creation, Shabbat being the middle. But the menorah also represents the 7 biblical holidays. The 7 biblical holidays are represented by the 7 branches of the menorah. The 3 spring holidays, the 3 fall holidays. 1, 2, 3 is the spring, 4, 5, 6 is the fall, and the weekly, the Sabbath, that is in the middle. Now, I want you to see something. All of the lights, all of the wicks of the menorah that was in the tabernacle and the temple, all pointed to the middle. They all pointed to the Shabbat. The middle one is the lamp of God. It never went out. The middle one most embodies and points to the spirit of Yeshua. All the 6 other lamps were lit from the middle one. So what am I saying? What I'm saying is the wicks pointing to the middle point to the fact that all 7 of the biblical holidays find their fulfillment in Yeshua. The 3 spring holidays find their fulfillment in Yeshua. At his first coming, he fulfills the first 3. That's why it's significant that it's broken into 3. He dies as the Passover lamb, rises from the dead on first fruits, and pours out his spirit on Shavuot, Pentecost. We're waiting for the second three, the fall holidays, to be fulfilled at his second coming, the Feast of Trumpets, the Day of Atonement, the Feast of Tabernacles, Sukkot, and then there'll be the time that is all Shabbat. Shabbat is both a taste of the Messianic kingdom, but it finds its ultimate fulfillment in the Messianic kingdom when Messiah comes and all the flames point to the middle, because that is the ultimate fulfillment, all pointing to the Messiah. So I hope that this was a blessing to you all. If you guys are blessed by this, I encourage you to sign up if you haven't for our weekly Torah portion guide. Check out our books and our classes. Would you consider partnering with us? We put a lot of time and effort, hours, and multiple hours from multiple team members putting the study guide together, putting this together for you. And friends, we've got some incredible stuff. I'm so excited to be able to eventually share with you. It's going to go to even a deeper level. But I just want to encourage you right now that if you were in the midst of a pressing, I just want you to know that it's going to lead to your blessing. And I just want to say that even as we enter into the Shabbat, for some of you, it has already begun. For me out here in California, it hasn't started yet, but not too long from now. Thank you, Jackie, for getting the book. I just want to declare of you that the stresses of the week should be lifted off of you. In the name of Yeshua, I'm declaring that the stress of the week should be broken off of you now in the name of Yeshua. All of the burdens that you've been carrying, everything that you haven't had a chance to finish this week, I just say, Lord, take that heaviness. Lord, take the anxiety. And I just speak life and blessing over you, that there is a rest in Yeshua, that there is a rest in Messiah, that he wants you to enter into. And I just speak Menorah. I speak that rest over you right now. I declare rest over you in the name of Yeshua, supernatural refreshment, supernatural renewal, that God should re-soul you as you rest and worship and pray and fellowship with God and your family and your friends. I bless you right now in the name of Yeshua, our Messiah. And I just say, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom. Janine, I miss you. Susan, Shabbat Shalom. Good to see you all. Laurel, Lisa, blessings on you all. Shabbat Shalom. It's been a joy being with you. I hope you're blessed. If this was a blessing to you, share it, like it, partner with us. And like I said to you, please pray for me. I am in the season of pressing right now. I don't know if I've ever been so pressed. I don't know if I've ever been so tired, because I am being pressed to bring in the word, to in study, to pursue revelation, fresh oil to share with you all in the near future. So I love you all. I bless you. And I just want to ask the Lord to shine his face upon you in the name of Yeshua Meshachenu, in the name of Yeshua, our Messiah. Amen. I missed you all. Shabbat Shalom.